Hi, my name's Dr. James Weiner. I'm director of the Weiner Wellness Center. That's spelled W-I-N-E-R. We're located at 2419 Baldwick Road, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania 15205. Our phone number is 412-922-WELL or 412-922-9355. And our website is drweiner.com. A lot of great information, including videos. And we hope to include a video of this gentleman. This is Ron, correct, Ron?
Yes, Ron Stewart.
Okay, Ron Stewart came here October 2nd of last year, and we have a picture right here, if you can see it, of this huge tumor growing out of his left ear. He didn't even have an appointment. He just came in for the Weiner Wellness Week. He didn't want his ear cut off. I recommended dietary changes and supplements, and here he is today. Pretty amazing.
Yep.
So it's all cleared up. There's just a little bit of redness there, and I told him to put some vitamin E on it, which I guess he's going to start doing today, okay?
Yep.
Well, thanks a lot, Ron. Why don't you sit down? It takes a lot of courage to break free of the medical system and try something else. So he still has his ear. They were going to cut your ear off, weren't they? They want to cut.
Yes, I have a daughter who's an RN. She has 85 people work for her out in California. She was trying to push me to go to a medical doctor. Her and I, we don't even discuss medical things because.
Well, what does she think now that has she seen a picture of what you look like?
No, she hasn't seen a picture, but I told her.
Well, send her here. There we go. All right. How many people are new here? First time you're here. Did you get the radio schedule at all? You did get it because it's right up there. The radio schedule, Adam, maybe give these people radio schedules if you want them. Okay, we're going to talk about heart and circulatory problems, leading cause of death in the United States. You know that heart problems are not that frequent in certain other countries. And the reason might be our diet. So we have a lot to talk about. How many people are on cholesterol medication? Are you aware that cholesterol medication does not prevent heart attacks and strokes, and that actually can ruin your health and cause congestive heart failure? How many people on blood pressure medication? Almost the same people. How many people have actually had a heart attack? Anyone here actually had a heart attack? No one, but you're on these medications. All right, so the idea of prevention in the medical field is to take drugs. The idea of prevention in the natural health field is to figure out the underlying cause of the disease and eliminate it. So we've got a lot to talk about. Now, there's a wonderful hospital in Cleveland, which is only about 2.5 hours from here, called the Cleveland Clinic. It is world famous. World leaders and rich people from all over the world go there. There is a Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, Jr., who's been a thoracic surgeon there for over 30 years. And he, 22 years ago, decided why not try to eliminate the need for surgery. All this open heart surgery, very common procedure done to millions of people every year. The interesting thing is, of course, many people who have heart bypass surgery where they take veins out of your legs and try to replace your arteries in your heart that feed the heart, have those bypass grafts clog up within 6 months to a couple years of the surgery because the people are not changing the cause of the arteries being clogged up. You may have to sit in two different... Unless Ron, you want to move over one maybe, or whatever. Okay, we're okay. We're doing good. So his name is Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, Jr. We have his book. Some of you heard of President William Jefferson Clinton. Like him or hate him, this guy had clogged arteries. And then he found out about Dr. Esselstyn. He didn't go to Dr. Esselstyn. He didn't even call him on the phone. He got this book and started on this diet and reversed his clogged arteries. Now, right here in this book, Dr. Esselstyn has what's called an angiogram or heart catheterization X-ray. And I think you can see the photo that's towards the center. The guy has a very narrowed artery, and then here he is a couple years later. The artery is fully patent or open. Can you see that? Okay. This was not done by putting in a stent. Anyone here have stents, little metal springs in their arteries? The trouble with stents is that it creates an obstruction in the artery to which clots and other debris can accumulate. Then they may put you on Plavix or Effient. Anyone on Plavix or Effient here? In that cholesterol packet, you will see that we have an article on Plavix. The unfortunate thing about Plavix is it does not prevent heart attacks or strokes, and it is very dangerous where you can get bleeding that will kill you. They have found that Plavix is no more effective than placebo. You could take a little sugar pill. A lot more expensive and a lot more dangerous. So what is Dr. Esselstyn doing? In this book, I don't know if I can find it, but in this book, right in the first chapter, he mentions that our chronic illnesses are the result of our diet. And just think of a wagon wheel with a hub and then spokes. So you have the bad diet in the center, and then you got all these symptoms, arthritis and cancer and heart disease. All these different diseases, many of them, are related to diet. We know in 1977, a bipartisan committee in the U.S. Senate did extensive hearings of experts, and they figured out that the leading causes of death in the United States were all related to our diet. That was 38 years ago. Our diet's gotten worse. We have genetically modified food. We didn't have that 38 years ago. More people are eating more junk food than ever before. So Dr. Esselstyn's diet, which is very similar to Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. John McDougall, is a vegetarian diet, a vegan, non-animal, not even dairy products, vegetarian diet that is low in fat and oils. That is his secret. Now, actually, we had a patient of his. The guy was out of breath just sitting, huffing and puffing just sitting, and had trouble walking across the room. And he went to Dr. Esselstyn, and then he came here 4 days later and saw Jamie Dorley because he figured, listening to me on the radio, that there were nutritional supplements that could accelerate his improvement and be, let's say, a complement or an improvement over just doing the diet. So we put him on some supplements. We're going to discuss them in a minute. So this book's available right here. And of course, during the Wellness Week, you get a 20% discount. Now, for those of you that like visual things, we have the video Forks Over Knives. This was premiered in Pittsburgh, one of the cities it was premiered in, a few years ago at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater, named for two very talented Pittsburghers. Gene Kelly, in fact, they're performing Singing in the Rain at the Symphony this week, and they're going to play the movie and have the orchestra accompany it. Famous dancer and actor. And then, of course, Billy Strayhorn, who actually was the one that wrote much of Duke Ellington's music. A lot of people don't know that Duke Ellington employed this composer, Billy Strayhorn, who was raised in East Liberty, Shadyside area. And Duke Ellington put his name, like the A Train. You ever hear the A Train? Very famous tune. That was composed by Billy Strayhorn here in Pittsburgh. So Duke Ellington's the famous guy, but actually Billy Strayhorn wrote his music. And so at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater, they auditioned this movie a few years ago, and I found out about it the night before. And I was able to track down Dr. Esselstyn's son, Rip. That's his nickname, Rip. And we have 2 books by Rip Esselstyn. He's a former firefighter, and he got his firefighter colleagues on the diet and dramatic improvement. Well, this movie premiered here in Pittsburgh, and I had Rip Esselstyn on the radio, and then later on I had his father, Dr. Esselstyn, and we're going to have all of those, if they're not already, available on our website so you can listen to them free of charge. We have a lot of videos there, a lot of radio shows at drweiner.com. So this is Forks Over Knives, and this details the parallel research of 2 people who didn't know each other at the time, Dr. T. Colin Campbell, professor of nutrition at Cornell University, who authored what's called the China Study, which we also carry here. And he found that certain populations that stuck to close to a vegetarian diet had very little disease. And then it also talks about the research of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn Jr. at the Cleveland Clinic. So we have the video. What is the basic premise? The basic premise is if you eat the wrong foods, it causes disease, including clogged arteries. And you can reverse disease. Your body can heal itself by improving your diet. Because keep in mind, your body is constantly replacing itself. The bloodstream you have now is not the bloodstream you had 120 days ago. All the cells have been replaced. The intestines you had last week are not the intestines you had this week. All those cells have been replaced. Your bones, every 4 to 7 years, depending upon your age and metabolism, all the cells are totally new. The same thing with every organ and tissue of your body. And what are those tissues and organs made out of? They're made out of what you eat. How many people have not heard me talk about the 3 little pigs? Anyone here not? This row here seems to be. We'll talk about the 3 little pigs. Now, I always wonder about these seemingly ridiculous stories that you learned like in grade school or nursery school. 3 little pigs. There were these 3 little pigs, and they somehow were able to build houses even though they didn't have hands. And one built it out of straw. The second built it out of mud, and the third built it out of brick. And then the big bad wolf came around. He was the bully in the crowd, and he decided to blow the straw house down. And then he took water and poured it on the mud house. It dissolved. But the brick house stood no matter how long he huffed and puffed and poured water on. The brick house stood. Why? Because it was made out of stronger materials, better materials. So you see, there was a moral to that silly story. This is your house. It's only going to be as good as the food that you eat and assimilate. So Dr. Esselstyn, along with other doctors like Dean Ornish and John McDougall, have been putting people on a vegan-vegetarian diet and reversing clogged arteries. So if you're serious about it, you're going to move towards that. And I have what I call the red meat packet. On the cover, somehow we put this little cartoon. It talks about all these different diseases related to eating meat, like pneumonia, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart attack, stroke, acne, influenza, tuberculosis, Alzheimer's disease, cancer. And something a little more statistical, we have a graph, and you see very little meat, very little heart disease or cancer, a lot of meat, a lot of heart disease and cancer. And then we have some articles here for you. Diet including meat costs healthcare billions of dollars, and they quote Neil Barnard, who's a medical doctor. Then we have this article, talks on how milk and meat actually cause bone loss. Yes, you just heard me right. Milk and cheese can cause bone loss. The calcium in the dairy products is offset by the high phosphorus content. We have that here. Okay, so we're trying to give you substantiation, because there's going to be a lot of naysayers that'll say, oh, that has nothing to do with it, or how come my cardiologist didn't tell me that, and all of that. The excuse I get from medical doctors is, oh, my patients won't follow it. Well, why not offer it to them as an option, and let's see if they follow it. This guy here followed it, got rid of his ear cancer. Now, not everyone's going to assume responsibility for their health, but I think you've got to present it to them. You've got to give them that option. You've got to give them the information, and then the person can decide on their own how motivated they are to get well. Okay, now, as I mentioned, this one patient that came to us basically couldn't even breathe when he's seated, couldn't walk across a room. He went on the Esselstyn diet. He also went on supplements that Jamie prescribed. A couple years later, guess what? Arteries totally cleaned out. Okay, so what are some of these supplements? We need to talk about this. You have this little, I may not have another one here. It's called Cardio Solutions. You got that? Oh, here, I have some here. And if you didn't get this literature, you can come up after the presentation and pick it up. Cardio Solutions. We have, you're stepping on the food. We have about 40 of these on different conditions. And they give you dietary suggestions as well as some supplements. So let's talk about the supplements. The first supplement I want to talk about is not even on here. So let's go to the cholesterol packet. This is very important. I don't expect you to read this now. I expect you to look at this when you're home or later today, whatever. All right, so let's talk about cholesterol. Cholesterol is a necessary nutrient. You would not be here without cholesterol. Your brain is approximately 50% cholesterol. Your hormones, both male and female, and both sexes make both sets of hormones, are made out of cholesterol. The cell walls that differentiate one cell from another, you have billions of these little cells, and then collectively the same type of cells form tissues and organs. Those cell walls are made out of cholesterol. So cholesterol is a necessary nutrient. Now, you don't have to eat it because God has provided that your liver can manufacture it. However, when you're on cholesterol medication, most of them are called statin drugs, and what they do is they interfere with the production of cholesterol by eliminating what's called the acetyl-CoA pathway. What does that mean in English? Let's give an analogy. Let's say you live in a house, and like I do, and I picked up the phone one day, and the phone was this complicated phone that actually plugged into the wall, and the receiver was burning hot. Okay, now I could have done one of two things. Either just pull the telephone out of the wall because I realized that it might start a fire, or I could have gone to the basement and shut off the electricity, either a breaker switch or maybe electricity the whole house. But if I did that, that would affect other things. It might affect the kitchen appliances. Maybe my refrigerator wouldn't work anymore, or maybe the air conditioning wouldn't work anymore. This is the analogy I give to explain that when you take a drug, it cannot target just one symptom, because what drugs do is interfere with chemical processes in the body. So you don't just lower cholesterol. What you're doing is doing that by interfering with this natural process of acetyl-CoA, which happens to be involved in the production of ATP, which is the energy molecule of the body, because you need what's called coenzyme Q10. So by taking this cholesterol medication, you wipe out your coenzyme Q10. Okay, these people here that are on cholesterol medication, are you on CoQ10?
Yes.
Did the doctor put you on, or you just found that out yourself? I put you on it. Now, many of you are limiting what you're doing to what I call low information doctors. A lot of these doctors really do care about people. They just don't know what to do. And so I always say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Okay? So a lot of these doctors are well-intentioned, they just are low-information doctors, and they don't realize the consequences of their actions. You know, it's almost like an animal. You know, let's say you have a cat, and the cat wants to scratch, and he ruins your sofa. They're not intentionally malicious, they just don't realize what they're doing. Okay? So the thing is that medical doctors only know what they were taught in medical schools, which are largely funded and controlled by drug companies. They don't learn anything about nutrition. Now, if you were to go to Europe and put on cholesterol medication, the cholesterol medication automatically has coenzyme Q in it to offset this one bad aspect of the cholesterol medication, but in America it's not. And so you can look up right in the Merck manual and you will see side effects of cholesterol medication that include Alzheimer's disease, liver damage, liver failure, muscle pain and weakness, and keep in mind the heart's a muscle, increased risk for diabetes mellitus, increased risk for cancer and infectious disease, low energy and fatigue, and, ironically, congestive heart failure. You're entrusting your heart to cholesterol medication, and it actually can ruin your heart. We'll have questions a little later, or comments. So, I'm not telling you to get off medications. I'm just trying to warn you about the side effect. If you're on a cholesterol medication, at the very least, you must get one of our coenzyme Q10s, preferably like our Power Q Null or our Power Q600, or at least the Power Q100. Now, how do you think they came up with the number 200 as being the upper threshold of cholesterol? Okay. Do you think there was a lot of scientific research to that? They tested tens of thousands of people. I am told it came up at a card game. A bunch of doctors working for one of the big pharmaceutical concerns were playing cards, and they said, how are we going to increase the sale of cholesterol medication? And they said, oh, let's just lower the numbers. I've never seen that refuted. So we went from 300 as being the upper limit 20 years ago to 200. And so if you fall around 200, they're going to want to load you up with cholesterol medication. In fact, I've had a lot of patients that are 160, 170, 180, and they were told to be put on cholesterol medication. That sounds fine, except for one thing, it's based on a wrong premise. And when I say this, maybe you'll understand it. If you start with a wrong premise, you end up with a wrong conclusion. Because most people that have heart attacks have normal or low cholesterol. So cholesterol is not a very big risk factor for heart attacks. It's just a myth, it's a lie that's been perpetrated by the pharmaceutical companies to sell tens of billions of dollars of cholesterol medication every year. Shocking, isn't it? So a lot of you just assume that eating cholesterol is going to raise your cholesterol and it's going to increase your risk of heart disease and heart attack and clogged arteries and strokes. Wrong. Most of the people that have heart attacks have normal or low cholesterol. Now, if you want to deal with the cholesterol naturally, let's say you have a cholesterol 350, which I think we'd all agree is high. If it's 180, I don't think you have to do anything, but if it's 350, maybe you have to do something. Well, obviously, changing your diet's going to lower it. Last time my cholesterol was checked, it was 125. I've been a vegetarian for 45 years. Now, incidentally, I'm 68, if you wonder how old I am. You know, I'm still walking around, still got hair and teeth. We have a product called Cholesto Care 2. Now, we used to have a product called Cholesto Care, and it was 2 bottles, and what we've done is improved it and put it into 1 pill. So you got information on that. So this is a safe way to lower your cholesterol if you really do have high cholesterol, and a few people do. Cholesto Care 2. And you don't have to worry about it interfering with the production of coenzyme Q10 because it doesn't have any statin qualities. Okay. Let's get to the next thing. How about high blood pressure? Guess what they did with high blood pressure? They arbitrarily lowered the numbers so people would fall into the abnormal range. I have a patient who for 10 years in a row was having a physical at work every year, and his blood pressure was 140/80, and the doctor said, "You're fine, you're doing great." The 11th year, the doctor says, "You need to go on blood pressure medication, your blood pressure is high." And the patient said, "What is it?" And the doctor says, 140/80. And he said, "Well, if you look on my chart, that's what it's been for the last 10 years. You never said anything before." He said, "Oh, we've changed the numbers." Okay? So if you have blood pressure of 140/80, I think you're fine, because that's what mine is approximately, about 135 to 140/80. We all have different sized bodies, in case you didn't notice. You got people that are 4 foot tall, people at 7 foot tall, people that weigh 80 pounds, people that weigh 380. We all have different size arteries. There's a variation, there's a range of normal. But let's say you really do have high blood pressure. First of all, are you drinking caffeinated beverages like soda pop or cola or coffee or tea? They constrict the arteries, which raises the blood pressure. If you're on soda pop and even coffee, it leaches out minerals, which then causes the arteries to constrict because you're missing minerals. So you got the caffeine constricting it, you got the minerals constricting it because you have muscle fibers in the arteries that change the passageway inside the artery. So your body can actually vary the blood pressure. And if you don't get enough minerals, your blood pressure can go up. Anyone on diuretics, water pills here. Water pills can raise blood pressure because they force your body to excrete minerals. Now, they may put you on potassium, but there are many other minerals and water-soluble vitamins that you need to take every day because you're washing it out. And also, that's very hard on your kidneys. And you may get depressed from water pills. You may get low energy. You might get erectile dysfunction if you're a man. You might get depressed. There's a lot of side effects to these drugs because you're washing out the minerals and B vitamins. Not to worry, if you change your diet, and that's the premise that we started with about the diet, you can also help yourself with our 7 flowers blood pressure formula. These are 7 herbs that they've been using in China for over 1,000 years. And for most people, this is very beneficial. It's not going to work for everyone. But this helps a lot of people normalize their blood pressure and also helps with stress. This is the original formula with all 7 ingredients. There are some other practitioners who have made copycat formulas that can't get all the ingredients. This is the one here. Now, we have sold maybe 100,000 bottles of that, I don't know, over the last 10, 15 years. Let's talk about NNT. Anyone know what NNT is? That stands for number needed to treat. Because I just said that 7 flowers may not do the trick for every single person, right? And you're going to say, oh, that's not so good if it only is 70% effective or 80% effective. The NNT is what the Food and Drug Administration uses to determine whether or not they're going to approve a new chemical drug. Chemicals that never existed before in the history of the planet that are made in some factory and then patented. The NNT, that is the lowest acceptable level, is 5, which means 5%. If a drug in a trial shows that it works on a symptom in only 5% of the people taking it, it will be approved for that usage, which means 95% of the people it's not going to work for. And that explains why a lot of people are on 2, 3, 4, 5 different blood pressure medications. Are you on more than one? How many blood pressure medications are you on?
4.
You're on 4 different medications. Well, the reason is that, first of all, they're not addressing the underlying cause, which is probably your diet. And number 2, these drugs might only be 5 or 10% effective, which means for most people they're not going to help them at all. But the side effects are still there.
I can tell that.
So the drug may not give you any benefit, but it has detriment. The third leading cause of death in the United States, properly prescribed medications. And I said properly. Okay. Now, anyone here suffer from what's called AFib or irregular heartbeat? Are you on blood thinners? Are you on any medication for the AFib?
No.
Oh, you're not? Well, that's good. All right, here's the thinking here, or at least the rationale. They're going to say, well, we're worried you're going to get a clot, and so what we're going to do is give you a blood thinner to prevent the clot. So going on warfarin, Coumadin, which is the same product, Pradaxa, Xarelto, does nothing to address the cause of the irregular heartbeat. It's supposedly intended to prevent the consequence, the possible consequence of getting a clot. I don't know of any research that proves that blood thinners prevent clots. And I don't think clots are a very common occurrence when you have a regular heartbeat anyhow. But I had a regular heartbeat. Here's what happened to me. I was in Florida a year ago, sunbathing, and not really consuming food or water or anything, and I started feeling a little funny, so I took my pulse. It was all over the place. Starting, stopping, rapid, slow, skip beats, all over the place. Now, I think the average person who would observe that in themselves by taking their pulse would get someone to drive them right away to an emergency center, an ER of a hospital. I did not. When I came back a couple days later, I took 2 supplements. I took our Magnesium Complete and our Cardio Stack. And guess what? In 2 days, the irregular heartbeat went away. Never to return. I needed magnesium. I was sweating, and I was sweating out my minerals. A lot of people that have blood pressure problems, heart problems, migraine headaches, muscle cramps need magnesium or other minerals, especially if they're on diuretics. All right, so we're trying to cover a lot of bases here. We do have the information on Cardio Stack. Cardio Stack. And this has L-carnitine, which is an amino acid, meaning a protein that the heart uses to create energy. Also has dimethylglycine, which is what's called a methylator, and that's good for all kinds of things. And then it has some CoQ10 in it. Another thing that's very useful for strengthening your heart. Oops. I hope everyone got all of this. Omega-3 we have here. Power Fuel. This is a critical nutritional supplement for people that have heart problems. Critical. I take this every day in the morning. I had my little shake. If you were here earlier, you saw I had my little chocolate super shake, and this was in it. And if you look at the back of this, it has D-ribose, which is a type of sugar that provides energy for the heart. It has the L-carnitine. It has DMG, and it has a bunch of other things in it, CoQ10. This is critical. So anyone who has a low ejection fraction, anyone know if they have a low ejection fraction? That's where instead of like 50% of the blood being pumped out every time your heart contracts, you might have 30, 35, 25. We had a guy in here the other day, a longtime patient of mine. He did have a heart attack last year, and his ejection fraction was 25, and now it's 65. By taking our supplements, the doctors are like totally amazed. They've never seen this before. How could this guy have like way above average heart function when he had a heart attack and it was so low before? Power Fuel. We also give that to athletes because it can strengthen the recovery time and performance. Power Fuel. Now, did you get this? Because I don't know if the people passed this out. Did you get the thing on omega-3? Okay. We need to talk about fish oils. Let's talk about that. Now, fish oils have been shown through various studies, starting in Scandinavia but now worldwide, to lower blood pressure, to improve blood flow, not thinning the blood. In fact, recent research shows that you can take fish oils even minutes before you have an operation. It will not cause bleeding. In fact, it will speed up the healing time. So it stops the stickiness so that you don't get clots, but it does not cause bleeding. Not all fish oils are created equal, however. Many of you are aware that the ocean streams, rivers, and lakes of the world are polluted. And so the fish that live in them are polluted, and the oil coming from their bodies is polluted. And you have to do what's called a 6-step distillation process to take the PCB and the lead and the mercury and all this stuff out of it. And we have an article in the back opposite where the food is on that spindle that a lot of manufacturers and retailers are being sued because their fish oil is contaminated. This is a whole other situation. I did a whole talk on this a couple days ago about quality supplements. So the fish oils we have here have been purified. They are free of contaminants. Very, very important. You don't want to just run to a box store, a big discount store, grocery store, drugstore, even maybe a health food store, because some of them are carrying bad products. Maybe the owners or managers don't realize it. So if you're going to get fish oil, I would encourage you to get the brands that we carry. Okay, so we're covering a lot of ground here. And in this Cardio Solutions, we don't have all the products that I just mentioned. But we do have the tincture called CircuCare Head and Heart. This is a liquid tincture. We have one of our coenzyme Qs, which is the Power Q600, which has dimethylglycine as well as coenzyme Q10. And we have a number of recommendations. I see on the back they do have the 7 flowers, which was not inside there. All right, now, Darlene, did you want to add something that's related to heart disease?
Yes. I was on Zocor.
You were on Zocor. Okay, Zocor is
Years
also
ago,
known
I'm
as
talking years and years
Simvastatin.
ago.
Why don't you stand up so we'll get you on video,
Okay.
and maybe we'll get you close to where my thing is here.
Okay. So
Okay.
I was on Zocor.
Okay, you were on Zocor, also
They
known as
test you-
Simvastatin.
They test you for it, and they found out I was going through liver failure. It was at UPMC with the head of the liver department. And he said, your AST and ALT are so bad you'll be dead in 2 years. And I said, well, what can I do? He said, nothing.
All right, so he did not know. Well, did they know that it was from
Yes,
the
the Zocor.
Zocor?
Yes, he did.
And so you were
I was off the
experiencing-
Zocor. I was
But you had the liver failure and they thought you'd be dead.
in
And
two,
how many years ago?
2
was
years.
that?
This is probably about 20-some years
20
ago.
years ago.
Mhm.
That
So,
might be before you and I met.
no.
No? Already
So
knew?
anyhow, I was crying, and his nurse came over, and I said, there has to be something I can do. And she said, why don't you try to not drink, stop drinking. I don't drink. So for a nurse, a medical professional, to assume, I said, did you look at my folder? I did my own research and found that a milk thistle, you have to use a good milk thistle, which I
Well, we have to live clear.
and I'm on that now. And I went back in 2 months, and my AST and ALT levels were good.
Liver enzymes.
And he said to me, I can't believe this. And I said, it was a milk thistle. You know what he told me? No, it wasn't. I said, well, what was it? What? You didn't give me anything to do. What did it? He wouldn't answer me. He said, but I'm telling you, it wasn't the milk thistle. I'm telling you, it was the milk thistle.
Okay, well, see, unfortunately,
His Live Clear is very, Live Clear 2 is very, very good. Very good.
okay, live clear too. Unfortunately, most people are going to limit themselves to their medical doctors. I mentioned before about low information doctors. They're down on what they're not up on. If they don't know about this, they didn't learn it in medical school, they figure there's nothing to it. And he said she'd be dead in 2 years, and that was 20-some years ago. So you have to take initiative. She found it out on her own. Some people come here and they figure, you know, I've been in this field for 45 years, maybe I know something. So the thing is about simvastatin or Zocor, which is the drug she was on, you'll find that in your cholesterol packet, that a study was done on Vytorin, which is a combination of simvastatin, also known as Zocor, and another drug, that it doesn't work. It doesn't prevent heart attacks, strokes, or lower cholesterol, but they almost killed her with it. And they didn't realize they had to at least put her on coenzyme Q10, but she realized milk thistle and other products like our Live Clear can actually help the liver detoxify. So the thing is, you can't limit yourself to medical doctors because they themselves have a limited education and don't have the answers. That's why we do the radio show 30 hours a week. That's why we have the email newsletter. How many people here have email? How many of you are not on our email newsletter? You need to sign up. Go at drweiner.com. It's free. We send out free information like this. We also have all this printed information. We're here to serve you. All right, now I have a couple minutes before the next speaker. Let's have questions. Kathy?
I use the Esselstyn book.
She uses the Esselstyn book.
I went to the Cleveland Clinic to a vascular surgeon.
She went to a vascular surgeon at the Cleveland. Okay, let me interpret. It's almost like a foreign language because it's not being picked up here. She went to the Cleveland Clinic that I mentioned where Dr. Esselstyn is. She had clogged carotid arteries.
I went to a vascular surgeon. It was 70% blocked. He didn't tell me what to do about it. I went to Dr. Weiner, and he said, go vegetarian, and I took some of his supplements. I had to go back in a few weeks. It already went down 10 points.
Okay, so wait a second. Her carotid artery was 70% blocked. She went on the vegetarian diet and took some supplements, probably like Arnatican Plus or Lumbrokinase. And she went back a few weeks later. It was already 10% improved. So instead of 70% blocked, it was only 60% blocked.
Now he wants to see me May 13th. Again, he wants to check.
Yeah, well, they're going to keep checking. We've had people that had dramatic reversals in a short space of time. And if you're sticking to it and trying to minimize the fats, I think he's going to be shocked to see that you're reversing the clogged arteries. And that's from this book we talked about, Prevent Reverse Heart Disease. Very good testimonial. Anyone else here? You have a question, sir?
Yes, I'm on statin drugs and that.
Yeah, you're on cholesterol, statin medications.
Yeah, it's Pravchol, and I ate real bad and all that stuff. And I saw
Well, you ache very bad. You need to get on like our Power Q600.
Well, the thing is, I saw you last March, and I took it.
You took what?
The Q10.
You started taking coenzyme Q10,
Yeah, and I took the Live Clear.
and you took the Live
And I
Clear,
felt like $1 million better.
and you felt a lot better.
Oh, heck yeah.
But you're still on the cholesterol medication.
Yeah, I mean,
What was your cholesterol reading before they put you on the medication?
it was like 186.
186 before the medication. There's no justification for you being on cholesterol medication. There's no justification whatsoever. Yes.
I have read where there are two different size particles, large particles of cholesterol and small particles. If you have small particles, it's more dangerous.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to the cholesterol thing. You know, there's high density, low density, very low density, big particles, small particles. But what I can tell you is, if you look at the graph that we gave you in the meat packet, you'll see that vegetarians have far less heart attacks than non-vegetarians. And probably if they went on an ideal diet like the Esselstyn diet, they'd probably never get heart attacks. So the thing is, if you eat what your body was designed to handle, it will work. Just think about a car. If you have a diesel car, you can't put regular fuel. If you have an engine that takes regular fuel, you can't put diesel in it. If you put the wrong foods in your body that your body wasn't designed to handle, it's not going to function right. It's as simple as that. A couple more questions, then we're going to end it. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, what? Unrelated, that's fine. Anything in the health field.
How would I eliminate the internal abdominal scar tissue or adhesions?
Okay, I think Mike was telling me that someone was here asking about that. We would recommend the wobenzyme for internal scar tissue. Take them 3 twice a day with water between meals. We had a lecture on that yesterday. Sorry you missed it. I'd also use our skin support, which has proline and other nutrients to rebuild tissue. So I would start at least with that. Of course, Charlotte Gerson, who's a very good friend of mine, close personal friend for 40 years, she has told me innumerable case histories of people who had scars that cleared up, including scars on the skin where they could see it, by going on an optimal diet, like a vegetarian diet with juices. We have the reds, the purples, the greens. If you flood the body with nutrients, it can start healing and reverse that. Okay, but I would go on the wobenzyme between meals and the skin support with meals. Yes.
What is your take on sugar?
What we have to understand is that many years ago, people didn't eat very much sugar. Sugar basically was coming from India. And they would have ships that had to go around the southern part of Africa to get to India, and the weather there is terrible, and a lot of these small little wooden ships they had 300 years ago would founder. And so it was very expensive, and only the wealthy people, the royalty, and the nobility could afford sugar. And they used it in very small amounts. And then when they started the slave trade here in the United States, they started setting up sugar plantations in the Caribbean. Then it became much more plentiful. And we find now that people are consuming a tremendous amount of sugar, and white sugar depletes the body of minerals and B vitamins, and also contributes to diabetes. So I would minimize the sugar. And a lot of people that have been on antibiotics, prednisone, cortisone, probably have fungal infections in their intestinal tracts, and sugar feeds that. Anyone with psoriasis, in my opinion, has a fungal infection in their intestinal tract. We've helped a lot of people overcome psoriasis by getting them on a sugar-free diet. So I would not recommend refined sugar at all. However, with that being said, diabetics and others are trying to use aspartame or NutraSweet or Equal, and that's even more dangerous. And we have an article over there on that. There's a wonderful video on YouTube called Sweet Misery, and it talks about the hazards of aspartame. It actually is a nerve poison and can cause brain tumors and all kinds of other problems. So, you know, if you had a choice between refined sugar and aspartame, I would use the refined sugar. However, you know, in a lot of our products, we either have xylitol or sorbitol or some other sweetener like stevia that's much safer. Yes, sir.
When you were talking about Plavix and that, the reason why they said they put me on Plavix is because I did a heart cath, and they said they went up in there, and
He's on Plavix, which is an anticoagulant.
and they said that my veins were flat like a balloon.
Your veins or your arteries? Probably your arteries they're
Whatever's
talking about.
inside the heart.
Arteries.
And they said they were flat like a balloon, and that's why they're make my blood real thin to go.
Yeah, well, they're worried about collapsed arteries, you know, being a blockage, and then you get on an anticoagulant. But you need to read that article that we gave you. It's in the cholesterol packet, even though it has nothing to do with cholesterol. We stuck it in there. About Plavix actually causes internal bleeding that can kill you, and it does not prevent heart attacks or strokes. So you probably should get on the fish oil, like our omega-3D fish oil. I would get you on something like our Rad-Free, and that helps to strengthen the arteries and the veins. Rad-Free. Now, you know, if you really want us to go through this in a comprehensive, individualized manner, I would suggest you make an appointment. A lot of people think that all we do is do all this free education. We have the Wellness Week. You come in here for free. You park for free. You have the meals for free. You have the consults for free. You got the free literature. We're on the radio 30 hours a week. But there is a place for interacting with a health expert. And so you can make an appointment with one of us and we can go over. Now you can get started beforehand because all this stuff is safe. But in addition, you ought to make an appointment. We can go over and explain all this and individualize a plan for you. All right, Myrna.
Spring is here.
Spring is here.
Therefore, seasonal allergies.
Seasonal allergies. Well, we have
Sinuses,
products. We have all
itchitis.
kinds of products like N-acetylcysteine. We've got the Air Max, of course, the Ester C Plus, and then course, I have treatments that have helped a lot of people overcome allergies. Okay, well, we're out of time. I know a lot of you have questions, so if you want to talk to me, I'll be over on the side there so we don't interrupt the next speaker. Thank you very much, and God bless you.